Well, you can tell by the way I use my walk. I'm a woman's man, no time to talk. Music loud and woman warm. I've been kicked around since I was born. It's alright, it's okay. You may look the other way. We can try to understand the New York Times effect on man. Whether you're a brother or whether you're a mother, you're staying alive, staying alive. Ah, 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 ah. Staying alive. All right, hey guys, this is AJ Unlimited here to bring you another video, and this is going to be my I don't know unofficial official video review of the U.S. version of The Office television series. Now, the reason why I'm making this video now and not like 10 years ago is because I've been listening to the Office Ladies podcast, which is ongoing. As a matter of fact, they just did the episode where Michael Scott / Steve Carell leaves the show. So it's been a kind of an emotional roller coaster these past few weeks. They've been releasing, so they release episodes every week, and they review each and every episode in very, very thorough detail. Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsey are the hosts, and they have guests and stuff. It's, they have like people from the show, people from just like wherever else, other movies and TV shows, and they recently had Steve Carell on as a guest, and they interviewed him for like an hour straight, and it was really good stuff, really juicy. And it's funny because obviously I've been a fan of the show since whenever I started watching it, but ever since I discovered this podcast and been listening to it, well, at first it was every day, and then I got caught up, and now it's every week. I have gained a much more deeper appreciation for the show. And I've totally like fallen in love with it. It is just, now that I know all behind the scenes stuff and just like certain like scenes that they could just barely get through, or certain scenes that like were improvised, or just overall writing and direction and production and things like that. So I'm going to kind of not only talk about the TV show, but also the podcast and how they both sort of really work together to light me up and give me a whole new perspective on the show. So first of all, I started watching The Office back in like 2012. So it was like right when the show was kind of starting to wrap up already. And, just like anybody else, I wasn't really into it because the first season is just, if you don't know any of the characters, you don't know the story, you've never seen the show before, the first season is like impossible to get through. It's just so boring and bland. And Steve Carell's character, Michael Scott, is just such a douche. And it's so cringy to watch how he does things, how he manages this office and stuff. It's pretty bad. I'm actually surprised, like to this day, that the show got past the first season, but that's whatever. But it's funny too because I had just saw Bruce Almighty. Bruce Almighty just came out. Well, now let me think about this. So Bruce Almighty came out in 2003. I was 8 years old, and I remember watching the movie for the very first time. We were watching this movie, and I barely knew Jim Carrey, and of course, I didn't know anything about Steve Carell. And Steve Carell is, of course, those of you who've seen the movie know that Steve Carell's in it. He actually plays like the kind of like the bad guy / like antagonist in the movie. But they were both hilarious in the movie. In the one scene when Steve's character Evan, he was like doing the news broadcast, and Jim Carrey's character Bruce hacked the teleprompter thing, and started like typing imaginary stuff, and Steve Carell went on this whole thing like just talking gibberish. And as an 8-year-old little boy sitting on the ground watching this movie, I was laughing so hysterically, and like I just couldn't stop laughing. And that was like my first ever like encounter with Steve Carell. But it's funny because in the movie you kind of grow to hate this character, Evan. I don't know, Evan Baxter, I think is his full name. So, I mean, obviously you're on Jim Carrey's side, Bruce, the whole time because he's the main character. He's like given all these powers. He's funny. He's, whatever, doing all this cool stuff. And then Evan's just in the background, kind of like stealing the spotlight every once in a while. And Bruce just hates him, hates his guts. So that translated to my little 8-year-old brain. And for the longest time, I hated Evan, which translated to hating Steve Carell. So I actually hated Steve Carell, like just because of that character he played, which is a testimony to good acting. I'll give him that. So, if you hate the character, then that just means that the person's probably just a really good actor. A few years went by, and I heard about the show The Office, and people were talking about it like crazy, and and I heard that Steve Carell was the main leading actor, and I'm like, oh, Steve Carell, that guy, what? I don't want to see that. This is stupid. And then little by little, my older brothers and sisters, I'm the youngest of six. So my older brothers and sisters started watching it, and they started talking about it. And before I know it, the topic would come up, and like half the family would just start talking and laughing about it. And I just felt super left out. And I think at one point I was like the only one left that didn't start watching it. So finally, like, I don't know, whatever, 6, 7 years later, I finally was just in my bedroom watching, just browsing Netflix, looking for something to watch. And my sister, she basically persuaded me to watch an episode that was like actually a good episode. It wasn't from season 1. It was from like season 3 or something, or 2. And so she started to just kind of show me highlights and show me like some of like I don't know, some of the best character moments and jokes and such. And slowly but surely, I started to warm up to it. And I already kind of knew about the character of Dwight, and of course Michael and Jim. Like those are like the 3 main like characters on the show. So I knew these guys and whatever. So I was like, okay, yeah, whatever, cool, it's fun, ha ha ha. And there were some jokes that I did actually kind of find funny, but the jokes in that show are so advanced, like adult humor, most of them at least. So, I'm like 17 watching this. I'm like, I don't get it. This isn't my cup of tea, whatever. Like, I mean, I still kept watching it because it's like, no, I kind of have to, right, to be part of the club. But I don't know. I was just watching it just to watch it. And, I was enjoying it after the first few seasons. I was, getting into it. And, I think Jim and Pam, their characters and their overall relationship was kind of what got me like hooked, because of the whole like season 2 finale, Casino Night, when Jim tells Pam that he's in love with her. That was, I think, the hook that got most people, including myself. I remember watching that and I was like, holy cow, like that's heavy. So I guess long story short, I kept watching, and every time like Jim and Pam, something would happen with them, that was like what really got me, and I think a lot of people were the same way. But and then of course Michael Scott, just being Michael Scott, and then you have Dwight, and that whole relationship, I mean, all that going on, and then you have like Andy now, and you have who else? I don't know, like Kelly, Ryan, Creed, who's just absolutely ridiculously hilarious in the most weird ways possible. So fast forward, I basically binge watched the entire show, and I finished it, and I was like, yeah, that was a good show, that was a good ending, great ending. Oh man, that was so great. And then it was just kind of like, okay, whatever, cool. That's sad, but life goes on. But of course, I kept going back and rewatching stuff because the show is it's just too addicting. You can't not watch it. It's one of those shows that you just watch when there's nothing else to watch. Like when I wasn't in the mood for like Walking Dead or Supernatural or Lost, which I was watching those at the time. I would just put The Office on, and it was just one of those shows that people would gather around and just watch it. Like, whether it would be in like the living room at our old childhood home, like, or just my bedroom, and my sister and I would just hang out and watch The Office. Sometimes not even pay attention. We would just like talk, and they would be on in the background. It's just one of those types of shows. It's a comfort show, and it always was. It always has been. It always will be. So that just stuck, in that sense. And even when I was in the Disney College program back in 2016, and I was in like a really bad depression, and it's kind of a long story, but The Office sort of got me through it, because again, it was one of those shows like that I knew it would always just be there for a comfort thing. Like I said, a comfort show. And even if I wasn't really in the mood to watch anything, because when you're in that state, you're so disconnected from everything. And it's funny too, because when you're super like chronically depressed, or clinically depressed, I should say, you don't even really know what interests you anymore, because nothing really does interest you. It's kind of like you lose touch with your entire like everything that you thought you knew you were. And so I didn't even really know what I was like interested in doing. All I wanted to do was just sleep all the time. But I knew I loved The Office. I knew that, and The Walking Dead. Those were like 2 shows that I would watch. But The Office was just one of those shows that made things just feel a little bit lighter, And I knew I loved it. I knew that was part of who I was. I knew that that's something I was genuinely interested in. And so I just kind of hung on to that. So then at some point, I think it was 2020, The Office was removed from Netflix for whatever reason. I don't really know why. Something about their contract expired with NBC or something. And so for a while there, I was just kind of without it. But at the same time, I was also getting into like Parks and Recreation too, and then like Trailer Park Boys. So I still had like something to turn to that wasn't The Office, but it wasn't the same. And The Office was off Netflix now, and I was thinking about getting the DVDs, but that just never happened. But then I discovered Peacock, and every season of The Office is on Peacock, and I think you can watch the first like 5 or so seasons on Peacock free, completely free. Now there are ads on Peacock. There's like, I don't know, 1 minute long ads per 7 minutes or so of the show, but it's not bad. It's kind of, about bargain actually. And then I think after like the 5th season or 6th season, yeah, it's like $3 a month, which is nothing. And they still do play ads, but what are you going to do? So at one point, my sister told me about the podcast. And, of course, keep in mind, this is like, I don't know, 9 years after the show had wrapped up. And so I guess Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsey, who played Pam Beesly and Angela Martin on the show, they started this podcast. And it's funny because in the show, they're like arch enemies, but in real life, they're best friends, the actresses. And at first, when my sister told me about this podcast, I was kind of like, I don't know. Like, if I have the patience to sit through that. But one day I was off work, and I just had nothing else to do. I was kind of cleaning up the house, doing house cleaning. And I was like, screw it. I'm going to listen to the first episode. And each episode is about an hour to an hour, 30 minutes long. I put on the first episode on my Alexa, and I started, just doing house cleaning. But I was getting like, because usually I'll do that with music. Like, right. So I'll be cleaning my condo, and I'll put music on, and it'll just be playing in the background. That was the idea with this. But I was listening to these ladies, and I would just go in my bedroom. My Alexa's out in the kitchen. I go in my bedroom and like put away laundry. And all of a sudden, wait, I can't hear it that well. And I'm like actually interested in what they're saying. And I'm like, crap. So I go out there and I find myself just like literally hanging out by the Alexa in my kitchen. And very coincidentally, completely unrelated, I just so happened to purchase one of those earbuds, like wireless earbuds, not AirPods. I don't believe in AirPods, but just like a cheaper version of AirPods from Amazon that I found. And at first I got them because I wanted to talk to my buddy on the phone, like hands-free, like Bluetooth style, but they didn't even work for that. So I had to buy a separate device for that. But so then I'd go to work towards the end of the evening when the day is getting wrapped up. I'd put my phone in one of those metal like food container things and, play music. But I started using my earbud for that because I didn't want everybody else to hear the music. I didn't want it to be, disturb. I didn't want it to disturb people, right? It's like my music, keep it to myself. So then I started using these earbuds. But after a while, the music was just kind of like, I'm listening to the same stuff over and over again. Started to get boring. And I'm like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Because my job, it doesn't require me to really talk to customers or like interact with people. It doesn't require a lot of customer service or anything. I just kind of keep to myself and do my thing. No, it was great. I was like, okay, cool. So I'll just listen to this podcast, and that just became a regular thing. Every single day I would listen to a new episode, and it would just, burn an hour of time, and I would just kind of get lost in it. And before I know it, an hour and a half or so had gone by, and I'm like, holy cow, that's great. And now I have all this new information in my head. And the thing about this podcast, it's not just them talking about the show per se. Let's just say there was the episode where Michael Scott burned his foot on the grill, the George Foreman grill. I don't think this is a true story, but this is the best example I could think of just on my feet, pun intended. They would like go into a deep dive of like, oh, when was the George Foreman grill invented, and like what is it, how does it work, and how many have been sold in the United States, and this and that and the other. So they really go on these tangents, but they're very informative and interesting, and can't get enough of it. Like I said, they'll have special guests, like they'll have like John Krasinski, who played Jim Halpert, or they'll have like one guest I really like is Brian Baumgartner, who played Kevin. The reason why I like when they have him on is because he's so like, to hear him speak normally, like a normal human being, is just so bizarre and surreal, and he sounds so intelligent too when he speaks. So I like him, and then like Rainn Wilson, who played Dwight, he's on the show a lot. So you get all that, and then even like they had a Billie Eilish on the show once, just like had an interview with her, and I don't even really like her that much. I'm not even a huge fan of her, but I enjoyed the podcast. It was just they talked about a lot of good stuff. So what I would do is I'd go to work, listen to an episode of the podcast, and then I'd go home and I'd watch that episode. I think some people do it opposite, or they watch the episode and listen, then rewatch it. I would just listen to one episode, watch the episode, and like be blown away by all this extra insight and behind the scenes information I have. And I don't know, it's just like my eyes are wide open, like watching this, and I'm smiling ear to ear, knowing what I know. Yeah, then I got all caught up right around the Threat Level Midnight episode, actually, which is like season 7 something. And then like I started going back because they'll do like reruns. I guess like during the holidays when they just are on a little break, they'll do reruns and they'll just replay episodes, and I would just listen to those, and I'd rewatch the episode when I got home, and I would catch even more stuff. So it's like it's just never ends. And then they did Michael's final episode or episodes, to hear about all of that, and then you have the interview with Steve Carell, which was like literally 2 weeks ago, not even. Oh man, it's just so awesome. I mean, I was listening to the interview with Steve Carell. I had to listen to it at my condo. I didn't listen to that one at work because I wanted to hear every last detail. I didn't want to miss a thing. I didn't want to have any distractions. So that's what I did. I cracked a few cold ones, and I put in my earbud because I wanted to hear it directly in my ear. And I was just like this the whole time, just like lit up listening to this. I actually submitted a couple questions, but they weren't answered. But that's okay. I don't take it personally. Jerks. So now, like every time I watch an episode of The Office, I'm just like so unbelievably grateful and like have so much appreciation towards the show now. And it's nice too, because back in the day when it was coming out weekly, back in like 2006, 2007, of course I wasn't watching it, but the rest of the world was, or whatever. So I would watch it years later when it came out on Netflix. So I was kind of like just in my own little boat, like watching it all by myself. But then the podcast came out, and it's almost like this whole new generation or era of The Office has been reborn. And now I'm watching these episodes again once a week with the rest of the world. And I know all this super cool insight, and it just feels like it's been resurrected, and now I'm part of this like new, like one big happy family type of thing. I love it, and it's funny too because my entire family loves the show to death except my dad. My dad is the only one that doesn't like it because he's very like business oriented, doesn't have the same sense of humor as we do, and he just doesn't get it, which I understand, no big deal, but the rest of us, including my mom, we all love it because we're super into that kind of humor, like making fun of life, making fun of ourselves, making fun of serious situations like office type settings, right? Which is what the show is all about, just making fun of ordinary day stuff, like literally taking the most ordinary, like normal, boring type like work setting and making a giant big fat joke out of it. We love that stuff. It's right up our alley. It's kind of like the entire cast is part of our family. Like I feel like I'm part of that, that whole ensemble in a sense, just as an audience member, which is I think what they wanted, the showrunners. But yeah, no, it's just one of those shows that it's a one of a kind. You will never, ever, ever create another show like that. It is so unique and special, and they hit the nail on the head with the cast, the crew, the jokes and the timing of everything, and the acting and the writing is just so freaking good. Like I'll tell you, like my favorite episode is probably the episode where they had the fire drill or whatever when Dwight like set off the fire alarms and there's like a big panic. But that's probably my favorite episode. And I do have one very specific favorite like moment, if you will, and it's a talking head where they just talk to the camera about whatever's going on. And it's the episode in season 3, I believe, Safety Training, where Daryl's in the warehouse and he's talking to the camera, and I guess he's using crutches, and I guess the camera crew asks him why he's on crutches, and he said, "Well, I was reaching for this thing on the top shelf, and one office employee who shall remain nameless kicked the ladder out from under me and yells, and then it switches to Michael, and Michael's cracking up and goes, 'Hey Daryl, how's it hanging?' And he's laughing, like cracking himself up. Every time I see that, I can't. That's just so hilarious. And I hope that somebody out there in the caster crew stumbles across this video and interviews me, or somehow maybe I end up on the podcast with them. That'd be great. But that's all. I think that's pretty much covers everything. And I just want to say, like, personally, to the cast and crew of the entire show, thank you all for just everything, for getting me through so much stuff and sharing a lot of good times, good laughs, and such. You will never have a show like that again. I'll take that to my grave. God bless you all. God bless Greg Daniels, the creator of the show, because holy crap, like, how did you do it? So if you haven't watched The Office, if you're on the fence about it, you better watch it, and you'll thank me later. So that's it. So thank you guys once again very much for watching this. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, comment, email me. It's all there in the channel. You know how to reach me if you have anything to say or any questions, comments, concerns, the whole 9 yards. And that is it. So thank you guys again for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time. God bless. At first I was afraid, I was petrified. Kept thinking I can live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights thinking how you did me wrong. And I grew strong, and I learned how to get along. That's for the Super Office fans out there.